Hello guys, so let us in this presentation learn about Docker volume. So Docker volume is an option of data persistency, that is attaching some storage with a container. So if we do not attach any container or volume like this, so what problems we have, let us see. So when a container is running, so in its lifetime it might generate some data like logs, application logs it could be, and data, for example, if this is your database container, for example MySQL or Mongo or Redis, whatever the database you are using. So in that case the data becomes very much important, right? So those are persistent data, you must not lose them. So that is why one problem we have is that by default container generates and writes all of this data within the container file system, and that is tightly coupled with the container life cycle. Somehow if your container is lost, say it is corrupted and crashed, so you will not be able to access that container anymore, so you will lose all of your data, right? So that is a problem. So that is why somehow we need a mechanism by which we will be able to decouple this data with the container life cycle. So Docker volume is an option of doing that. Okay, there are a couple of other options also, we'll learn all of them, but Docker volume is the most popular one. So how it works actually, so for example this is the storage attached to your computer. Okay, the host machine you have, this is your host machine file system, for example, and here there is the option to mount a particular location of this storage within the container, and you will be able to write all these logs and data instead of writing within this container. Those will be actually be written in that storage. Okay, that could be your host machine storage or something. So now what advantage you will be getting is that if this container is lost somehow, so your data will be present in your storage, so you can spin up new container and get those data again. Okay, so this is the advantage we get by the using of Docker volume, and there are a couple other option also. So first option we'll learn about this bind mount option. Okay, this is option by which we can just achieve this goal, that we can just attach some storage and mount it within a container. So first option is bind mount, and second we have is that volume. This is the most popular one, and there is another option that is called tmpfs. So let us learn all of them one by one. Let us focus on bind mount. So here, say for example within your container there is a folder app/data where you just generates your data. Okay, and also in your storage you will create one folder called home/data, and whatever the directory could be, you can just the name does not matter, any path you can just create a folder over here. Okay, now Docker gives us option to mount this particular folder into this folder. So what advantage we'll get is that whatever data the container will generate within this folder, actually it will be writing directly into this, because this file is mounted, this folder is mounted over here. So this option is called bind mount. So when we are directly mounting one external folder within a container, and this is very easily achievable. So there is a Docker command by which you can just achieve this. So you already know that Docker run command. So Docker run, you will just write Docker run dash name, for example, say you will just put the container name over here, and then there is the option called dash volume. Okay, this is the option by which you will be able to do this bind mount. So there is another option also other than volume, there is option to mount. This option you can also use, but both have different syntaxes. So out of these two, the volume is mostly used. So instead of writing volume completely, you can just use the short form -v. Okay, and then you will just need to put the host path here. So in our case the host path is home/data, means the storage path, directory path in your host machine path. Then you will put a colon and then the path within the container, that is the app/data. Okay, then the other options you will put like the image name and the port mapping, etc. I'm just not writing them. Just remember this first portion, this is your first host, and then second one is the container path. And let's see another option, and the important thing is that this storage you are using, this could be your local storage. First option, it could be your local storage. I mean your local machine disk. Okay, and also there is possible that you can use some network storage also. Network storage means there is some other machine remotely which exists within your network. Okay, that machine has some storage disk, file system, etc., so that you will be able to access through IP addresses, so you can use that also. And also it could be a cloud storage also, that is AWS S3 for example, and it could be GCS, Google Cloud Storage, in GCP. So all this option you have. This is the biggest advantage bind mount provides us, that you will not need to be dependent on the local storage only. You can use remote, and there are a couple of options you can use. Now let us learn about volume. So in case of volume also, you have a container, and within the container there is certain folder where your container populates data, and you want that data to persist. So in that case, earlier what we are doing, we are just creating some folder and we are loading it, mounting it into this folder. So currently there is a little bit difference. So instead of creating folder here directly, we'll just create some volume. Docker gives us option to create volume. So you will just create a volume like this over here. Really, there is a Docker command which exists. You can run here like this, Docker volume create. Then you will just put the volume name. So for example, vol1 in our case, in this case. So you just it is very easy and straightforward to create the Docker volume create. This command will just create this volume. You will not need to worry about at all. Okay, so in your file system this volume will be there. So after that, the command is more or less same, just like the before. So you will just write Docker run, then the other options, container name like this, dash name, container name, and then you will just add a -v, and they will put the volume name here instead of the folder. Earlier we are using the folder here, but here now we'll be using that volume name, and then we'll put the colon and we'll mention the path within the container which you want to add, app/data, and then the other options like my image, etc. you will just the image name you will put here. So here the important thing is that, so here you are just using the volume name instead of the folder. Okay, so you will need to before and create this volume. Earlier in case of bind mount you were creating the folder, but here you will just create the volume. Exactly this volume is. So let us see. So this volume is nothing but a folder. Okay, but this folder has some properties. So it exists in a specific location. So actually this volume folder is created within a specific Docker area, and this area is completely managed by Docker itself. So in case of Linux, this particular location is in this folder where lib/docker/volume. This is the dedicated location in, if it is a Linux operating system, your host machine, then this particular location where actually this volume one is created, that is created as a subfolder in it. Say you will get a folder called volume one over here. Okay, so whatever the volume you will create, they will come under this volume directory. So you will ask, so why, what advantage we get with this? Why we are doing it like this? Because this is also a folder. Earlier in case of bind mount also it was a folder, but why we are doing it? So actually it gives us a advantage is that it is completely platform independent. So when you are running this particular command, Docker volume create, so you do not need to worry at all that what is your current operating system is. But in case of bind mount, say for example you are using Windows operating system, so the folder path you will be writing here at the time of just container creation, that folder path might differ. How to write the path in case of Windows, in case of Linux, in case of Mac, it might differ the locations. Okay, so that is not completely a platform independent, I mean not operating system independent. So that is why Docker gives us this volume option, so by which you just, this particular command is same for whatever the operating system it is same. So that is why you do not need to worry about the path, about your file system structure, etc. You will just create a volume, and that volume you just can mount it. So say for example in your local machine, when you were doing the test, it was a Linux or Windows operating system, and when you are deploying in production, that is a Linux, say for example. So in that case, this command etc will remain consistent throughout actually your different environment, development, staging and production everywhere. So volume gives us that facility. And also in terms of permission and accessibility, etc., this particular location is completely managed by Docker, its permission and everything. So you will not need to worry about that at all. But you can access that. If you want to access this particular folder, it is possible. So there are commands also for that. Docker gives us that facility. So these are some of the advantages of volume over bind mount. So in case of volume, you have seen that you are creating this volume explicitly. So there is another option. This, when you are creating a volume explicitly with a specific name, we call it a named volume. So this is a named volume when we are just creating it with a specific name, right? This volume has a name. And there are one option that where you just do not need to create that. You will just, the command will look something like this, that docker run name, container name, and then dash volume. After that, this section you will not write. You do not need. You will just mention the path within the container what actually you want to persist, right? So here app data is the folder. You will just only write this particular name. Dash b will take the input of the container path only, nothing else. So in that case, Docker creates volume here within this directory. It will actually create a volume which will where this particular folder will be mounted, but it will put some random name over here. Say the name is XYZ. This kind of volume we call as anonymous volume. Anonymous volume does not have a specific name. So this is all about volume. Let's go to the third option, that is the tmpfs. In case of tmpfs, we persist our data using memory instead of storage. In other two cases, we are using our disk, like permanent storage it was. But here in case of tmpfs, as it's a temporary file system, so we will be using memory. So this is actually a little bit different, quite different. The purpose is also different with the others. So this is mainly used for caching purposes. Say for example, your container where you are writing some data in a certain folder in a file, but which you want to access very frequently. Okay, so if you write them in a storage or disk, it will take time because storage are very slower than memory. So that is why Docker gives us one option to actually mount some location of your memory. So say this particular location in your memory will be mounted over this in this folder, and actually this folder, whatever the content it is, they will actually be accessed through from this particular location. So whenever your container will want to access, instead of reading it from here, it will read from this memory. Okay, so it will be faster in that case. So to use tmpfs, you will need to write something like this: docker run dash tmpfs, and then you will just put the path within the container. So I'm not writing the other option like container name, image, etc. Here you will just put your image name. So the important thing is that you will just write here this dash tmpfs option, and with then you will just mention the path within the container where you will just keep your cache data. So in our next video, we will do a workshop where we will be actually using all of those commands in the terminal, and we'll see how to use them and what are the best use cases for different types of storage options we have. Thanks for being with me.